always have a clean dish towel by your side. You want it to, either wipe up your knife, wipe up your hand, or wipe up your board. So it's always a good thing to keep nearby. Next thing actually I want to talk about is plates. So I'm going to be using, these are just standard dinner plates, like about I'd say this is probably about like a maybe 8 to 10 inch. And what we want to do is we're going to be putting the fish on this interior part. And this exterior part is called the lip. We want to keep the lip nice and clean. And we do that so that when we take our plate out or remove it from the oven, we have something to grip onto. And of course, I'm going to be using an oven glove tonight, but I may also use my dish towel, which is another reason to have a clean dish towel nearby. So it's going to be helpful to grab this hot plate out. And then I have 2 sets of them. And the reason I have 2 sets is because we're going to use one as a charger plate. And that means that when we take the hot plate out of the oven, we want it to go onto a surface so that nobody's touching it directly, or if you need to adjust or move it, you're not touching a hot pan and burning yourself. So first things first I want to show is my cutting board. And on my cutting board, I've just put it down on the surface here, but there's nothing underneath of it. And so it's going to be moving around a lot. So I want to make sure I secure it. And the way to do that is to take either a piece of paper towel or a dish towel and just dampen it slightly. So I'm just going to dampen it a little bit with a little bit of water. I don't need it to be soaking wet so it's falling apart, but just a little bit of water, as you can see. And I'm going to lay it down here under my board. And then I'm going to put my cutting board on top. And now you can see it's nice and secure. It's not going to move around. So that's our first step here, security. So let's make sure we always are practicing kitchen safety and securing our boards. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is having prep dishes. So I like to have always like little bowls or like a prep plate nearby. And this works really well to just, put our ingredients in so they're not just sitting on a same plate. I have all of mine tonight lined up on a half sheet tray. But once I cut the chili and, peel the ginger and do all that, I want to have little put it in. Additionally, I'm going to have a bigger bowl. I'm going to use this as a discard bowl. And I like having a discard bowl so I'm not constantly sticking my hands in trash or, in any way touching things that may cause cross-contamination. We always want to be careful about that. If you're working at home, you can always be washing your hands constantly. Make sure to keep that in mind. It just helps so you don't spread any germs anywhere. So first thing first is I'm going to take my pan and I'm going to get my plates prepped. So I just want to spray this interior portion of the lip, okay, just so that it creates a nice non-stick surface. And this will help so that when we actually go to plate the fish after it's cooked, it'll be an easy cleanup. So I'm going to prep 2 plates here because I'm going to make 2 portions this evening. Okay. And then I can just set these off to the side. Don't stack them, obviously, because if you stack them, you're going to have some of this, buttery non-stickness on the bottom of a plate. And going into a hot oven, it could create some grease issues. So just be careful about that. Okay, now first things first. We're just going to pick our cilantro leaves. And as I said before, we're going to be working with just the leaves tonight. I would reserve the stems though, because they still have a ton of flavor, and they work really well if you just want something to like brighten up your eggs in the morning, or even like sometimes, you just don't feel like cooking and you may just grab like a pack of ramen or, like a cup of noodles, and just adding this into it really brightens it up. So we're going to go ahead and I'm going to do probably about 2 or 3 sprigs here. I really like cilantro. And by keeping the leaves whole like this, you're going to have a really pretty dish when you go to plate it, or at least when you go to eat it. The visual part is just as important as the actual prepping and slicing of the fish. So let's go ahead and get this ready. So, and then my last one here. Okay. I'm going to take these leaves. I'm just going to set them off to the side in a bowl, and we'll get to them later because we're going to top our fish with this when it comes out of the oven. Okay. It's just like that. Oh, you know what? I have a little bit more here. Let's go ahead and just clean it up. Personally, I don't think you'd ever too much cilantro in a dish like this. I think it really brightens it very nicely, and you'll see once we go to eat at the end. Okay. All right. So now, next thing we're going to do is we're going to prep our ginger. So now with the ginger root, I've already gone ahead and I've given it a little rinse. You always want to make sure you're washing everything when it comes back from the grocery store. You never know where it might have been, if it fell on the floor. So always want to make sure that you wash all your ingredients really well before you start cooking. So what I like to do with the ginger, I'll show you a technique, is we always like to take a spoon, just a regular kitchen spoon, you know, anything you may use for eating soup or, you know, cereal or anything like that. This one has a little bit of a nice curvature to it. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to scrape down the sides of the ginger. This helps so that we don't lose too much product. And we're just removing this outer skin, which in my opinion can be very bitter. Sometimes also it can hold like a little bit of bacteria. So you always want to make sure that you're washing it well before you start and then removing it. Right. And this is about, I'm working with here a little bit more than 2 inches, but you really just need about 2 inches of ginger. I know that sounds like a funny way of describing it, but that's a lot of times how we talk about purchasing and buying ginger. It's in inches. So I'm going to take this, and this is where my discard bowl comes in handy. And I'm just going to drop these into the discard bowl and set it off to the side. Yeah. So again, I'm going to give my hands a little wipe here. So with the ginger, I'll bring you guys in closer. So with the ginger, what I want to be doing is I'm going to cut off this little brown part I have at the end here. And I want to have like a nice, even, just sort of, like I said, a 2-inch piece. So what we're going to do now is, oh, sorry, kitchen safety also. When you're holding your knife, you always want to make sure that your forefinger, your pointer finger here is over your knife and then your thumb on the other side. And this adds a lot of stability to holding the knife. The other thing I want to make sure you do is do the claw. And this form helps so that you don't cut your fingers. This way, when your knife is hitting it, it's just hitting this flat part and not your fingertips. So always make sure to tuck in those fingers, make your claw, and also your thumb. Keep your thumb sectioned inside. If it tends to slip out, you might cut it. So just be careful of that when working with a knife. So now I'm gonna hold my ginger with my claw hand, and I'm just gonna make a paper thin slice, as thin as I can possibly get it, to get a nice, it'll create a flat side essentially is what we're doing. But we just want to be able to get a flat side to work with. So now the ginger is going to be nice and secure. So what we're going to do is we're going to cut down, again, just a thin slice. And this thin slice we can set off to the side. We're going to be using it. And we're just going to, I just want to get really like a 1/16 of an inch, as paper thin as possible is what I'm really looking for here. So if you can see that, it's very nice and thin. And this helps, so when we cut it again, we're going to cut it down to make little batonets, and it's going to be nice julienne ginger. And this will have a really nice mouthfeel when we go to eat. If you wanted to also, if this is really tricky for you, you can also use you know, a grater or a microplane, just something to get it nice and thin. But also you can also just grate the ginger. I just like this because I think it adds a really pretty look to it. So I'm just going to keep going. I want probably about like 4 or 5 slices for 2 portions today. And if you have leftover ginger, again, you should try tossing it in like scrambled eggs in the morning or making an omelet with it. It's really delicious to make a nice egg sandwich. Okay, so I'm just going to reserve this part off to the side. Be careful with your knife also here. And I have these nice thin, paper thin slices. You can all see that. Okay, and you can see they're probably about, like that's about a 1/16 of an inch wide. So once we get these slices done, we'll do this one at a time, you know, just give you a chance to see what I'm doing here. I want to, again, make my claw, and I'm going to cut down into the grain a bit. And I'm going to do that so I can create a nice thin julienne piece. So, like so. Let me just give you a little more room so you can see here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to slice nice and thin. I'm going to make my claw, get my fingers as close to the edge as possible. Here's what I'm doing, so that my knife is just going to rest against the flat part of my fingertips. And I'm just going to make a nice thin slice. And I'm going to do a rocking motion here from the tip to the base and slice through the ginger. And just keep moving your fingers back just a little bit. The knife will have the room based on where you move your fingers back. So you just want to be careful here to just not get to the edge. When you get to the edge, you can just do one at a time, one little slice there, and one more. As you can see here, now we end up with these nice thin little pieces of ginger. And like I was saying, these shreds are just really great on the palate when you go to eat this dish. So I'm going to go ahead and just set these off to the side. Then I'm going to keep going with my remaining slices of ginger. And this is a really great technique to practice in general. You can do it with carrots, and then it's really great to add into salads. But really any vegetable can be made in this format to be a julienne. I'm going to go ahead and just repeat my remaining slices. You can see it's just getting nice and thin, little julienne pieces, like so. Okay, there we go. And I'm just going to scrape this down into my prep bowl. Now let's continue with the remaining. You can even pick up the pace a little bit if you're feeling confident. You know, if you're comfortable with your knife skills, by all means, you know, like just give it a nice rocking motion. It helps to create a balance between the product from where you're cutting and how your hands are. You get used to doing it, but it's a nice little balance here of just, you know, holding the knife, getting used to the grip, the weight of it in your hand, the rocking motion, and how it slices through. This is another reason why we want a very sharp knife when we're working with our food. This way, then it will cut evenly through. If you're sawing through a lot of times, you're going to end up with uneven pieces. If you grated it, it's fine. That juice will actually add, that ginger juice will add a lot of flavor. But this way works as well. So, you know, with these pieces that I had in the beginning, I'm going to go ahead and cut them up. I don't want anything to go to waste here, at least for this particular dish. But I guarantee in the morning, we will be having cilantro and ginger in our egg sandwiches. If you haven't tried it, trust me, it's delicious. And it's very refreshing. It's herbaceous and aromatic. A good way to brighten up your eggs. And if you don't eat eggs, you know, you can even add it into a sandwich. Think about like banh mi's. You ever have Vietnamese sandwiches? They always are using lots of cilantro and pickled ginger or pickled carrots. It's a lot of variations and a lot of things you can do with it. And as I said, if you're for the type of person who gets hungry late at night, you just want like a cup of noodles or a quick ramen dish, it's great to just toss in. Okay, so now moving on, we're going to go to our scallion. So with our scallion, like I said, we want to just have this top portion. We have a little bit of extra skin here, so I'm going to go ahead and just peel that off so it's easier for me to work with this. Okay. You can see sometimes when you touch the scallion, it has like a little bit of sliminess under the skin. You just want to go ahead and give your hands just a little wipe. You don't want to have any accidents here. So because I want to just be working with this top portion here, I'm going to go ahead and just make a slit. So about, I'd say like, so right about here where it starts to get the green down to the white, where the green starts to become lighter green, that's where I want to cut. I'm going to go ahead and just cut right through. And I'm going to reserve these scallions for this to the side and use them later. And so now we have these really nice, beautiful, tall scallion pieces. You see that? So what I want to do here is I'm just going to separate them so it's easier to cut. I'm working one at a time. I'm going to go ahead first and cut. So I noticed that mine is a little bit dry here on the top. So I'm going to go ahead and just cut that off. Okay. I'll put that into my discard bowl. And I want to show you how to cut the scallion. So what I want to be doing is I want to be cutting it at a bias. And by a bias, I mean like at an angle. And I really want it at something like a 45-degree angle. It'll be nice and pretty and give you really thin little shreds. So similar to the ginger, we want to get it pretty fine. So we're going to go ahead and make our claw. We're going to lay down our scallion down. We're standing vertically through it. And then we're just going to slice through. We're going to keep doing this, just creating nice little thin strips of scallion. Okay. And show you, so this is what you're ending up with. You see that? It's like a nice little circle, but it's a thin piece of scallion. Okay, you can see even here, and it's okay if it separates. You just want to be able to have like a nice thin little shred. Why can I not find my camera? Okay, there we go. So now let's continue with the remaining scallion. Again, don't forget your claw. And just at a 45-degree angle, as thin as possible, really. Just going to keep cutting through. And you want to make sure you cut all the way through the scallion, you know, create nice, even pieces. All right. And I could say if you have a really fresh scallion like I do, you can even start to smell a lot of that oniony flavor. It's going to be really delicious in this dish. I'm going to gather this up. I'm just going to set it off to the side here, my board. And I'll continue with my remaining pieces of scallion. I have about 2 left here, and then some little pieces also as well. So again, I'm going to cut off this top part because it's a little bit dry and brown. I'm going to go ahead and just slice at a 45-degree angle. just straight through. And you know, if you notice, like as you're doing it, you're kind of getting really, you can get really long shreds depending on how you change the angle of your scallion. If you're cutting it more to bias like I am here, you're going to end up with about a 45-degree angle. You're going to get a really nice bias. But if you wanted something longer, you can just do thinner slices going down. Okay, so I'm going to just keep going with it. And I'm just moving it off to my side of my board here. And just, this will get about 2 more slices out of it, like so. Okay. So this is our scallion. So it's nice and paper thin. It's got a nice, you can see even the shape of it. It's nice little prettiness to it. Just cutting it out of bias, you know, and you can do this again, like I said, with a lot of different vegetables. Always think about how you're cutting it, because that really matters how it feels in the mouth when you're eating it, as well as just, you know, the visual aspect of it. The first thing you do whenever we eat is we eat with our eyes, as well as our other senses, like smelling your food. So you always want something that's aromatic. You want to make sure that the visual aspect of it is really appealing. I guarantee it'll help to increase your appetite and desire to eat the dish. So now I'm going to just put these off to the side because they're really thin and tiny, but I do have one more piece here and I'm going to just give that another slice on a bias. So here we go. And just nice, take your time, you know, there's no rush here. So just, it's very minimal ingredients here to prep, which is nice about this dish. Really, it comes just in the preparation of how we slice our fish, really making sure we get it nice and paper thin. Okay, just one more. Okay. And again, now whenever you're gonna like gather things on your board, always try to use the back part of your knife and not the blade. And this will help so that it doesn't dull out the blade. Okay, so I'm gonna take that and I'm gonna just set it off to the side here. Like so. Okay. The next thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna cut the chili. Okay, so with the chili, what I want to do is I want to get really thin little circles. It doesn't really matter how you cut this. I like it to just be nice and thin and tiny. So this way it spreads around the plate really nicely and you'll feel it in every bite. So again, just cutting nice little rounds down, making sure I cut all the way through. And this is a Thai green chili. It's very spicy. So if you're not into heat, definitely don't do this. But if you are, you know, it's always good to explore a pepper. If you had a serrano works well as well. I just think sometimes jalapenos don't necessarily have the heat behind them. So that's why I like to use Thai chilies. Okay, so I'm gonna grab another little bowl here. Oh, I'm out of bowls. Okay, well, I'm just gonna put it here onto my prep plate. All right, just set it off to the side. And now, before we do anything else, I'm gonna wash my hands because I've been cutting this chili and it's all over my fingertips. So I'm just gonna rinse my hands really fast. Okay. Making sure I don't touch anything else. I can even smell that chili, I can feel the heat. If you've never tried Thai chili, green chilies, definitely give it a try sometime, but just maybe keep some milk on the side or, you know, a nice ice cream, something to cool down the palate because it will get hot. All right, so now we're ready to move on to our fish. And actually, one quick notion just on the side here. So this is the pan I'm going to be using to heat my oil in. I like using a non-stick pan. I find that if you're using a, well, I don't like using a non-stick pan because I find that it can start to warp when you're trying to heat it up. So stainless steel works really well. Some kind of skillet. This is the only one I have. It's very wide mouth. So I'm going to be using this evening. So I'm going to grab my fish. And I've already taken the time to give it a rinse and pat it dry. I'm just going to go ahead and remove this. Just had it in a little bit of paper towel. And so this is my halibut. Okay. Mine still has the skin on. If you don't have the skin on, it's okay. We're just going to really be working on trying to get paper thin slices out of it. So I'm going to set my plate off to the side because I don't need that anymore. The first thing I want to do is I'm going to remove some of this. This is like this sinew almost from the bloodline of it. Okay. So I'm going to just go ahead and just cut right down and just remove that part. Okay, we don't need that. Now, if you don't have the skin on, this is a really great thing. So you can really just slice down this way if you want. But what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be trying to cut from the top. The top, just working my way down till I get all the way to the bottom of the fish. So if you can see that, we're going to be slicing just slices this way, just to make paper thin slices until we get to the bottom here. But like I said, if you don't have the skin on, you just want to do a nice thin little slit. Okay. Oh, I see we've lost Anuja. Okay. So if we're ready to go with it, whoop, getting fish on my hands. I want to make sure that I have my plate nearby. Okay. So let's just keep it off to the side here. Are we all together here? Ready? So what I'm going to do is, because I want to use my fish knife here, I'm going to show you how to cut it. So I'm going to be working just like I said through the top of it. Let's do it here because we have a nice little angle here at the lip. It's sort of like coming down, and we're going to want to be making our way down. So I'm going to go ahead and just show you how to slice this. Again, I'm just going to get my knife in just a little bit, and then I want to have it almost parallel to the fish. You can put your fingers just on the top here of the fish, making sure to slice all the way through. And that ends up with a nice paper thin slice of fish. You can see that. Okay. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to lay it down on my plate here into the middle part of this mouth portion. I'm going to keep going again. So what I'm doing is I'm just lining myself up with the fish. I'm going to start here at the heel of my knife. I'm just going to slice paper thin. And just once I get through, I put my fingers on top to hold the fish in place. And just keep slicing through. Right. Like so. We're just going to keep going here with our fish, filling up the plate. So now we're just going to continue. If you can see, I've just been making these thin slices. So I want to just go ahead and just make the slice ever so paper thin, and then I guide, using my fingers, going to guide the knife down. Okay, I'm going to hold on to that fish, and it's okay if it comes apart. It's not always going to be it's not always going to be an even piece, but we just want to make sure that it's paper thin. So if you're using just a regular standard kitchen knife, I'll show you how to do it with a kitchen knife as well. It's the same motion that we're making here. Just want to start again at the heel over here of our knife, of our blade, just making a slight, almost parallel, but really at a very sharp, almost 25-degree angle, making sure to hold our fish and cut all the way down through. You can see it's a nice thin piece. If you happen to cut a piece, let's say that's a little bit on the thicker side, just show you a little thing you can do here. You just take your knife, lay your fish down, and just give it a nice little press. Just a little bit of pressure, you know, and it'll just sort of smushes the fish, honestly, but it gets it nice and thin if you have a thicker slice. And if you can't seem to get it really thin, it's okay. It just means that when we actually throw it into the oven, you're going to want to have it there maybe just an extra minute. Okay, so now we're just going to keep going, making sure to use the entire length of our knife here. That's a nice, pretty, you can see that. So let's go ahead and just get that laid down. So, and we're going to keep going. Okay. And again, you want to be going down just towards the skin. Like I said, if you don't have skin on it, it's okay. You can make these slices down, just, you know, across, like just down through the fish. That's probably, like I said, you want to get about a 1/16 of an inch or an 1/8 of an inch. You don't want it to be too thick. So if you think about sashimi, you want it a little bit thinner than a sashimi slice. Okay. Again, I'm going to get my fish cut through with my knife, use my opposite hand for stability. And when I get to the bottom, I'm sort of doing a scooping motion. And this keeps it so that we're not getting any of the skin. We're just getting the flesh of the fish here. All right, I'm gonna lay that in. And again, it's okay if it breaks apart. We just want to make sure that we have a nice solid circle in the ring here. Okay. Get that laid in like so. And let's continue. Okay. All right, again, nice thin slice. Put my knife down, and again, at the end, you're basically ending up with your knife just rubbing against the bottom portion of this skin. All right, just gonna get this little bit that's left on the blade here and just poke it in. All right. So if you don't have oven safe dishes, as I said at the start of this, you can use a quarter sheet or a half sheet pan, but you really want to have it as a nice even circle, as even as you can possibly get it. But that's really what we're aiming for here. So now I'm going to grab my second plate, just lay it down, so I have something to work with. All right. And this is also a thing I should say here is that if you ever want to make this dish, you can also do it in advance. You can set this probably about a day. You just lay a little bit of plastic wrap on top and you can actually stack your plates. We used to do that in the restaurant a lot. Right, so just gonna again, cut right through and just start to turn my knife at a nice angle, trying to work it through the flesh of this fish. I know that sounds really, really crazy to say the flesh of the fish, but that's actually what we're dealing with here. This was once an animal, so. All right, let's continue going, get the second plate ready. Like so. And again, see, it fell apart, but that's okay. Just want to pick it up and arrange it so it forms a nice solid circle here. Okay. And you can see, as you can see what I'm getting at here, we have really just the skin portion that's going to be left here. Okay. So. And again, the prepping of this plate with some non-stick spray is really going to help in the cleanup, as well as when you go to eat it. This way your fish won't be stuck to your plate and then you can't really get too many bites out of it. But this, by spraying it in advance, we have a nice even keel with it. It'll just slide right off. All right. So we're almost to the end of it here, but we still have enough to make more slices. Okay, well, that was a tinier slice than I had wanted, but hey, still nice and clean. And that's another thing also when you buy seafood, you want to make sure, we always say if it smells clean, and that means that it doesn't have a very strong ocean smell to it or aroma. You don't want something that's too fishy. If it's too fishy, then it's most likely it's either been previously frozen sitting out for a while, or it's just not very fresh. So just keep that in mind when buying fish. It's really also, if you're ever in the fish market and you feel like it smells terrible, find another fish market. It's really, it's best to just be on the safe side, err on the side of caution, and just go somewhere else. Okay. And this particular fish I picked up at my local Whole Foods, but you know, it's always good to find a really nice fishmonger in the neighborhood, or just one that you really like. Being here in New York, you know, I have a couple options to me, but one of my favorites was Chelsea Market. And because I can't really make it there right now, I find that Whole Foods is, you know, offers some pretty good selections. If you couldn't find halibut also, you know, or you can in the future, always you can try something like fluke, which I find is really good. You know, any sort of solid whitefish, sea bass would work. But sea bass, you want to make sure that you're really getting even thin slices, because it may take a little bit longer to cook. So just keep that in mind if you ever have to change course and use a different seafood. You can also do this with shrimp. You just want to make sure you get it nice and paper thin. Okay, so I'm getting towards the end here. And as I'm getting to the end, it's a little bit difficult to cut it. So this piece is a little bit on the thicker side. So let me show you what I mean by pressing it. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to lay it down. Okay, and I'm just going to give my knife just a little bit of pressure just on top of it. It'll help to just spread the flesh out, which is really what we're looking for, and get it nice and thin. Okay, you can just gently rub your knife just against it, and you can see you get a nice thin piece like so. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and just lay that down. And I can probably get, I can get a couple more slices out of here, but you know, my plate really only has room for one more. So what I'm gonna do here is I'm going to cut, I'm gonna change directions. And I'm gonna cut this way now, okay? So it's gonna produce, I have a pretty big piece here now. So what I wanna be doing again, just adding a little bit of pressure and just sort of pulling with my knife, just ever so gently. And this is gonna help to spread out the flesh. And again, make it paper thin. And this is helpful, like I said, if you're struggling with just getting it really nice and thin, this is a good way to make sure that you have thin, even slices. Okay, it looks good. So I'm just gonna clean this up, just a couple more little pieces here and there. Okay, one. And again, every time you cut, just lay it down. You don't really want it to sit on the platter. It's always to do one slice at a time and then put it onto the plate. We do this so that we know exactly how much we're using and working with, and then the fish doesn't have a chance to fall apart on us. Okay. And so I have this extra slice. I'm going to add it to my last plate just to fill in some edges that I see here. Okay. Again, slicing through, layering it here on the edge, just making sure that there's no holes. Okay. So I see actually I've already hit like what this is, and this is usually the bloodline of the fish. So sometimes this can be a really bitter, weird tasting. So I'm going to just go ahead and cut that out of this little slice that I made. Okay. And I'll take it and just form it to the edge. So now at this point you can see really what I'm left with is just the skin of the fish here. If you're somebody that likes, you know, garde-manger, which is really just trying to figure out what utilizing leftovers in different ways, you can save this and make a fish stock out of it, or as we call it, fish fumet. And it works well for soups, for broths, you know, anything you want to do with it, really. You can go ahead and put that in my discard bowl. Now, I'm done with my board, so I'm going to go ahead and just move it off to the side and give my hands a little rinse. I don't want any cross-contamination happening, so let's go ahead and just make sure we wash our hands thoroughly. Okay. And again, always make sure in the kitchen that you're always washing your hands regularly. You never know what you're touching or what had touched it before you were there, so it's always good and just important to do that. You don't like to spread any germs around. I'm going to give my hands just a nice wipe here. And I'm going to take my damp paper towel that I had before and just give my station here where I was working. I see a little bits of fish left over. I just want to make sure I clean that up. Then, of course, later on, I'll definitely use a cleaner. Always make sure after working with proteins that you use a proper cleaning agent to get it sanitized. Okay, so now what I want to do is we have my two plates here. Okay, so the next step is going to be we're going to take our soy sauce and we're going to put our soy sauce down. So I'm going to measure it out. I want to use about a tablespoon per plate here, or if you're using one giant dish, it's 2 tablespoons total. I'm going to measure out a tablespoon, and then I want to just spread it just a little bit around. You know, don't worry if it's not exact. It doesn't have to hit every single piece. It will, I promise. One of the things that happens is the oil tends to help create the sauce. It helps to bring out any of the fish, you know, after broiling it, any water that's in there, and that's really just the jus. Okay, so set that off to the side. And I'm going to top it next with my ginger. All right, like so. All right. Great, let's go ahead and distribute it evenly amongst both plates here. Like that. And again, it doesn't have to be perfect, you know, you'll still get a piece of ginger in every single bite, and it'll be very flavorful. If you wanted to add something like sesame oil, you can do that later on, but I think it makes the dish a little oily. But it's also something you could do. But again, do it after we take it out of the oven. If you do it before, the sesame oil might burn. Okay. So the next thing I'm going to do is add my scallion and put it just on all this, just a little bit around. Again, you know, it doesn't have to be exact. Ooh, my broiler is definitely heating up my kitchen here. So make sure if you're, that you have your vents on, so you're not overheating at all, and please stay hydrated. Always an important rule when cooking. Sometimes we forget that the kitchen gets so hot and it's so easy to just become dehydrated. All right, so that's looking nice and pretty. So I'm going to just show you real quickly. This is what my plates look like. Okay, if you can see that. All right. And now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to turn on my stove here, my top here. And the thing is, I want to get this pan nice and piping hot. So I'm going to turn it on to the highest setting and just leave it there. And while that's happening, I'm going to take my green chili and just finish on one of these dishes, the green chili. I know you're thinking, oh, this is getting hot. We want it to be really, really hot. So I've topped it with my green chili. I'm going to give my hands a quick rinse. I don't want to burn myself. And now while that's heating up, we're going to take our plates and we're going to pop them into the oven right here under our broiler. Like so. Okay. And just so you can see, I have it right there on my top shelf. Okay. So now the next step we're going to do, excuse me, just going to close this up, is I have my pot heating up here, my pan. I'm going to go ahead and just add in 4 tablespoons of oil, and I'm just going to eyeball it for myself. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. So we want to leave this in the broiler for about 1 minute. Okay. And then we have our pan heating up. Make sure that it's getting nice and hot, that the oil is going to reach a really nice high temperature. We want it to, this is the thing about working with grapeseed oil, is that it has a very high smoking temperature. So if you're working with another kind, you'll start to see a lot of smoke. So luckily with grapeseed oil, if you're using it, and you should be, you won't have that problem. So we can start to see the oil just start to glisten a little bit in the pan. It's almost like it's separating in a way, but that's not exactly what's happening, but it has that look to it. So now our fish has been in for a minute. I'm going to go ahead and take it out of the oven here. And just be careful when removing it. You can see it's already cooked all the way through. Take both pans out. Here we go. Ooh, my pen is stuck. Okay. Go ahead and turn off our oven. You can go ahead and turn off your stovetop too with your oil. We're going to take this and just top it with some cilantro leaves, like so. And actually, sorry, if you have your charger plate nearby, let's put these on top of the charger plate. Okay, so let me just grab mine here. This way it's going to be easier to just serve afterwards. So I'm going to put these on top of the charger. And now I'm going to take my hot oil and I'm just going to slightly just finish it on top. And you can even hear a little bit of that sizzle as it's cooking that cilantro, making sure it just distributed all the way around. Okay, so I'm going to do this on both plates. So, all right. Actually, I see I have a little bit more oil than I need, but so I'm just going to reserve that off to the side. Make sure I got all the cilantro nice and hot. So, and then I want to give my plate just a little bit of a cleanup here. Just have some little excess oil, making sure not to disturb the fish at all. Just getting it cleaned up. Okay. And so there we go. This is our Halibut Paillard, finished with nice hot grapeseed oil with just ginger, scallions, fish, and a little bit of soy sauce. And of course, for my favorite, the Thai green chilies.